Apparently, a lot of people have been wondering lately, how do you know you're trans? Like how to know for sure that you are trans, I think is kind of where the angst is coming from. And I don't think very many people are discussing these kinds of issues nowadays. We're mired in all this anti-trans news all the time, and I do think that there is a lot to be worried about with regards to coming out and all this. Back in the day, I used to make content that was more gender 101 stuff, and I feel like oh, I've moved past that. But, if everybody moves past it, then we leave a lot of people behind. So I wanted to discuss it with my chat and kind of figure out, especially since a lot of you have come out more recently. Like, I came out damn near 15 years ago. Like, how did I know I was trans? I had really intense dysphoria. So I want to open up that conversation a little bit more because obviously we don't want to tie being trans to dysphoria. We don't want to say that you have to be in pain and distressed physically about your body in order to identify with a different gender. Despite the fact that I'm non binary, my journey was a little bit stereotypical in that I was like freaked out about the changes that were happening to my body during puberty. I was freaked out about the idea of assimilating into the social role with women. Like, that just wasn't what I wanted to do. And, that was the source of like where I figured out I was trans from, and that's just me. So I wanted to kind of open it up and discuss maybe with some of these folks who have come out more recently or realized they were trans more recently, discuss some people's different experiences and journeys, and maybe that can help elucidate for any person who is out there searching up how to know that you're trans. Here's some people who are out having this discussion so that you can benefit from it. So before we go too much further, I just want to say, hit the like button if you're enjoying the content. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell and maybe clicking all notifications to get notifications for the channel. Also consider checking out my brand new merch store, which just launched. There's going to be a link down in the description. And you can also check out my Patreon, where there are some promo deals for patrons if you want to maybe get a deal on some of your merchandise. So thank you very much for watching the content. Hope you continue to enjoy. I think a lot of folks say if you are asking yourself this question a lot, then that itself is probably an indication. Like, I know someone who started a website that was like, how do I know if I'm trans? And you go to the website and it's basically just a page that says like, congrats, you're trans. Like, I can't remember what exactly it actually said, but it was essentially just like, if you are looking for like a quiz or something to tell you, like, are you trans? Like, the likelihood is that you probably are. Like, if you're this invested in asking yourself that question, that's probably a pretty good indication that you are actually trans, right? And I think a lot of the advice these days tends to focus in around experimenting, like trying to dress differently or trying different haircut or painting your nails or doing the mascara mustache thing that you can do. You get like a really light colored mascara, I guess depending on how dark your head hair is, and just like the little tiny hairs that are all over your face anyway, just kind of like nee, 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 and then give yourself a little mustache. And see how you feel. Give the Starbucks barista a different name and see what it feels like to have them call out a different name. These are some like different experimental ways, and that's sort of the advice that I've given in the past for how to feel this out. Oh no, Avi was trans, masculine, non-binary. When I was 6 or something, I tried peeing standing up and realized it don't work. I've heard that before. Folks who are between the ages of 4 and 6 asking, well, when am I going to grow my penis? Like, they see their brothers and they're like, well, when am I going to grow mine? I know that I'm going to. Or people thinking that they're not going to get a period, even though they're like, oh, I know girls get periods, but I'm not going to get one. Obviously, it eventually ends up happening anyway. Max says, finding the posts in r/egg IRL way too relatable. Honestly, one of the first big steps for me was shaving my head, just off with the hair, pure gender euphoria. Yeah, like for trans girls, maybe it's going to be, hey, skip a couple of haircuts and see if your hair being longer makes you feel nice. Or if you are trans masculine, try cutting your hair and see how that goes for you. It's not uncommon for people to just shave their heads and then that's like their peak gender euphoria. I know someone in my personal life, as well as Max in the chat, who just like shave their heads and it's like, okay, so by doing, you can come to understand what is going on with you, Try out different hair, try out makeup, try out wearing different clothing. ask your friends to use a different name, ask your friends to use different pronouns. You know, you can kind of figure things out by experimentation. T-Rex says, for me, it was just relating to men and wanting to be only around men and feeling very alien around women, almost like I'm invading their spaces. Yeah, that's not uncommon, I don't think, is the feeling like you don't fit in with the sex that you were assigned at birth, like socially speaking. And like for some non-binary people, it can feel like, well, I do fit in with women for these reasons, but I don't fit in for these reasons. And I do fit in with men for some reasons and not for other reasons. I know it depends on the social situation. Like there are times when I'm like, I would rather be around a bunch of women. And there are times where I'm like, okay, I'm feeling like I fit in with the boys more today. And that's what's comfortable. So if you're non-binary, the social role aspect of it can definitely be a lot more complicated. And so that's why I do tend to focus in on like you doing what makes you feel comfortable, because you cannot rely on people around you to accommodate you socially in a way that you're going to be like, okay, well, people are treating me like I'm non-binary, therefore I know that I'm non-binary. Like people don't necessarily reflexively have that sense of like, I'm going to treat you like you're non-binary. I'm going to reflexively use the right pronouns. Even if people know your correct pronouns, they might not still internalize. It's like easier to fit in. Okay, trans woman becomes a woman. Like, cool. She fits in with the women and they treat her like a woman, right? But there isn't like a similarly equivalent thing for non-binary people. Yeah, that feel when you fit in best with a bunch of It's Misfits. It's Misfits. That's a great band name. Max, the It's Misfits. That's a good one. My egg kind of cracked by constantly playing girls in RPGs, MMOs, tabletops, and actively seeking games with female protagonists, while finding myself annoyed when I had to play as a guy, and I still do. Then I looked at my depressing life and was like, oh, that makes sense, doesn't it? Yes, I hear this is fairly common. Egg posting hours. Playing a different gender in the video games. I've heard some trans girls say, oh, I used to have the excuse like, oh, at least it's a nice ass to look at. That's why I play a female character. Obviously, it ends up being a little bit more deep than that for those women. Any like fantasy situation, if you have an opportunity for a fantasy situation and you often find yourself cross-dressing or playing cross-sex characters, that might be an indication that you're trans. If you're excited to try out a different social role during a time where you know that it's more socially acceptable to bend those rules, or like at the Renaissance Festival, I'll see people who like basically they just look like men and they're cross-dressing, and I'm like, is it just because it's fun? Like, is it just because like this is transgressive? Like, or is this much like Halloween, one of those occasions where like closeted or early days figuring themselves out trans girls can like wear what they want to wear and not worry about that being socially unacceptable? I should have twigged that I was envy when I always wanted a roster of both male and female characters to play in MMOs. Could never pick a side. I ended up playing, I think, a lot of female characters in the MMOs that I would play. It sort of depended on what race they were. But I think that a lot of it was because I didn't identify with these like hulking male characters. Kay says it was a really long road for me. It got started when a friend just asked if they could dress me up as a girl for Halloween. I still kind of think she knew I was an egg and knew that I would love it. I just felt so much better, and I just kept on occasionally dressing up till I slowly just wore more and more girl clothes than guy clothes. Yeah, for sure. That experimentation, taking an opportunity when it is socially acceptable, like Halloween, or like some other time where it's normal to wear a costume. Throw a costume party even though it's not Halloween. You know, there are ways to explore this in that like kind of playing dress up way. Yeah, we love Link. Link is truly, if you identify with Link, it doesn't matter if you were assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth. If you find that you really vibe with Link from the Zelda games, then you might be trans. Because like, I don't know why, but Link is trans icon no matter which way you go. For me, it was definitely being really happy when I would get to wear my ex-boyfriend's clothes, not because it was my ex-boyfriend's, but because it was always guy clothes. And I want to make sure that we don't reinforce stereotypes here that like, you know, if you are, for example, if you are assigned male and you think that you're a trans woman, but you don't want to start wearing dresses, you like working on cars, you like playing sports with your friends, I don't want to reinforce that idea that there's like a stereotype involved, but it's like, how do you want to be a person who works on cars? Like, do you imagine yourself as like a badass female mechanic? Or do you imagine yourself as like a man who's covered in grease? Like, I don't know, like there are different ways to approach and actualize those things. And I want to be clear that, being trans is not about finding a stereotype to fit into. It's just about being authentic to yourself, right? Do you want to wear this when you go be a mechanic? Is this what you want to wear?
Thinking...
Shush. I'm sorry. I'm shushing a woman, and it's very bad optics for me to do that. But is this what you want to wear when you go to be a mechanic working on cars? Because you can do this. You can be a guy, like a trans woman who works on cars and just wear this to the thing. Look at, yeah, flawless. Her skin is so smooth. Anyway, continuing. I recently had a reassessment day. Even though I'm 2 years into transition, I realized this was basically the biggest affirmation for me. When picturing the future in which I make things easier on people and go back to being a man, it made me feel so hopeless, as if that person would never exist in that future. Yeah, like that's another thing too. I think that that's a common narrative, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. How do you imagine your future? When you're trans and you imagine and for me, this hit when I was a teenager. I was starting to feel like I was transitioning from being a girl and I was supposed to be a woman, and that was just really distressing to me. Can you imagine yourself growing older as the gender that you are assigned? How do you imagine yourself getting married? Do you imagine yourself getting married as a bride? Do you want to fulfill that role? Or do you feel like you are more I want to be a groom marrying a groom? That's what I want out of my marriage. Can you imagine growing old and being an old woman or an old man? What do you envision that looking like? And obviously I'm presenting this in a pretty binary format, but that is the starting point. For me, part of how I figured out that I was non-binary was by trying to do both of those different roles and realizing that no matter which way I cut it, I was not feeling like I was fitting in. Whether it was a girly girl or a tomboyish girl, neither one was working. Trying to be a masculine guy or be a feminine guy. Feminine guy is the closest thing I've got, but I'm non-binary. So feminine guy, non-binary flavor. I don't know. That's where I've landed personally. And that's been an ongoing process. It took a few years to feel like I solidly knew what it was that I wanted. So Charlotte, being a binary trans woman, I believe, is saying, I imagined trying to go back to being a man and making things easier. It made me feel really hopeless and I couldn't envision a future where I lived like that. And then also imagining being non-binary as a compromise position. Oh, well, maybe I don't need to be fully trans. Maybe I can maybe I can just identify as insert gender here, but not make any changes and not even really insist on different pronouns. Maybe that would be acceptable. Maybe I would still be authentic to myself, even if I was declining the medical care that I thought that I probably would actually enjoy having. And it just doesn't really stick that way, is just, at least for me. Avi corroborates, I tried imagining going back to the egg version of myself 6 years ago, and I never want any of that life ever again. I need queer T for T love and friendships and experiences. Right. Fitting in with other trans people is another big one, I want to say. If you find yourself really attracted to trans people, and maybe that is a confusing sensation where you're do I think that you're hot? Or is it just that I really am attracted to your energy and I want to be around you? If you find yourself really interested in trans lives and you have a lot of trans friends, there is a good chance that you are attracted to those things for reasons that you don't yet understand. That's pretty common and this is where the sort of social contagion idea comes from, which I want to thoroughly debunk. It's I think that just queer people know that other people are similar to them, even if they don't yet understand what that is in themselves or in the other people. So you'll have a friend group of oh, we were the misfits when we were younger. Oh, we didn't fit in with any of the other kids. And then it you all go your separate ways in life. And then you later realize, oh, all of us are some flavor of trans or queer or some combination thereof. And it's not because it's a social contagion. It's because we feel something familiar in each other that's kind of hard to place. That's one of the great things about being trans and being queer, is that you just kind of have camaraderie a lot of the time. Obviously, we have the mean girls of the trans community. We've got the Blairs. We've got the, we don't want to deal with all the BS from right-winger trans people, but for the most, there's kind of an inherent camaraderie in that. So if you find yourself really interested, you're really learning a lot about trans people, you're thinking about it a lot, you're friends with a lot of trans people, or you find that those are the content creators that you want to see the most often, that could be an indicator as well. And like, I also want to, I guess, clarify that any individual one of these things is probably not going to be a good enough indicator. You know, if you like wearing button-up shirts instead of dresses, I don't know how much of an indicator that is on its own of what your gender identity situation is, right? But it's like the accumulation of a lot of different experiences. Did you used to imagine wearing your mom's dresses when you were a little kid? Did you used to imagine wearing your dad's suit and going to work at an office as a businessman? Are you currently interested in like changing the way you look? You know, like there's a number of different things. What social group do you like? What kind of games do you want to play? Like all these different factors are going to stack up. And so you're going to need to look at the broad spectrum of your experiences and try to figure out like, okay, is there a discontent that can be solved by coming out or by starting hormones? And address the individual problems on their own. If it's social gendering that you have the biggest problem with, but you don't feel a particular need to change your body by starting hormones or doing surgery, then you don't need to do those things. You can just have a social transition where you come out and ask for different pronouns and change your name and cut your hair maybe. Like, you know, that is a perfectly acceptable way of expressing your gender. You don't have to do any one particular thing. If you want top surgery and not hormones, you know, if you want to go on hormones to change certain things and then stop, like, that's fine. If you want to go on a full, I'm going to commit to getting top and bottom surgery and like facial surgery and 20 million years of hormones, it's fine to do any different range of those things. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about it. But I'm saying identifying the specific issues that you're having can help you identify what the specific solutions are. So if the problem is, oh, my brow ridge is too heavy and it makes me look like a caveman and I don't like that because I'm a woman, then facial feminization surgery might be something that you want to plan for. And that's like addressing a specific problem. Maybe you need FFS, but you don't have a problem with your genitals, and so you should not feel pressured to get bottom surgery just because you identify as a woman. Dresses, check. Women, heart, aka trans woman / lesbian, easy peasy. Of course, I'm oversimplifying, but it does feel good to be who you are and to know who you are. Yeah, absolutely. That's another angle that I am really appreciative that you brought up. How do you view your sexual orientation is another indication here. Like, if you were assigned male, let's say you're a boy and you grow up and now you're a man and you're like, okay, I'm attracted to women, but you find yourself really jealous of lesbian relationships. Or if you think of yourself as a lesbian trapped in a man's body, that could be an indication, because sexual orientation, the way that we currently express it in our modern day, has inherently something to do with your own gender, usually. Like, unless you weasel out and use a term like queer, for example, which doesn't imply my gender in that description. But like, if you say, I'm a lesbian, that means that you are a woman or a non-binary person who is aligned somehow with womanhood, and you are attracted to women or others who are aligned with womanhood, right? Generally speaking. Maybe there are exceptions, whatever. Those are the kind of relationships that you're seeking. So that's what lesbian means. It always has to do with like who you are as well as who you're interested in, you know? So kind of thinking about, how do you conceive your sexuality? Like a similar thing, if you are assigned female, let's say, and you are attracted to women, a lot of people might call that lesbianism, and they might call that a lesbian relationship. Maybe you are even like a little bit masculine and they describe you as a butch, but you might feel kind of uncomfortable with that. And like, I actually don't really feel like butch lesbian is what I am. I feel more like I just am a masculine person who wants to be in a relationship with a woman or a feminine person. And I feel like that's more hetero, if that's possible. Like, and obviously people think that's kind of weird. Like, it feels strange if you're early on and you're like, oh, I'm jealous of gay men, even though I'm a woman. Why? Like, you know what I mean? So that can be another angle. Like, what kind of relationship do you imagine yourself being in? Which is kind of how I touched in about like the marriage. Do you imagine yourself as a bride or a groom kind of thing? Because it's like, what do you imagine doing and being in your life? Do you imagine being a mom? Do you imagine being a dad? Those are two different social roles. They're two different physical roles to inhabit. A teacher when I was in first grade asked us to draw a picture of ourselves when we grow up. I drew a picture of myself with a beard. She was horrified and told me that that would not happen. Little did either one of us know that I can naturally grow a goatee as an intersex person, and I will do so if I don't shave. Internally, I knew who I was even though the world called me a girl. I always knew that I was neither. It feels good when you can, in your adulthood, look back and go, hey, like that's what happened. Like I can tell based on things that have happened throughout my life that I am, and I've always been this way, you know? So I do want to say, as we're wrapping this segment up, that it is perfectly acceptable for you to think that you're trans and maybe decide later that you aren't trans. It's okay for you to be unsure. Yeah, Jade ringing in as yet another person who asked my mom at 5 years old when she was going to get me a penis. Yeah, when am I going to grow a pee-pee? We know developmentally that right around ages 4 to 6 is the time that most people, if they're given the opportunity, will know that they're trans. Obviously, plenty of people don't know until later, but yeah, the earliest indications that we see are right around ages 4 to 6. Everybody's on a journey. It's okay for you to explore the idea that you're trans and then decide that you're not. It's okay if you try out hormones and then decide that you don't like it. I would recommend doing those kind of things rather than like, oh, I'm going to do surgery and then regret it later. You know, if you're unsure, if you're still testing things out, maybe you do really feel like you want to not have breasts and maybe you should wear a binder for a year or two and then like decide if that's going to solve your problems. Do you think that getting top surgery is going to stop people from misgendering you? Because the answer is probably not. I didn't know until I was 20, late bloomer. Yeah, plenty of people don't know until later. I realized it when I was like 14 or 15, kind of during puberty. Some people don't realize it until they're in their 60s. It's never too late to come out. But yeah, it's perfectly acceptable no matter where you're at on your journey. If you're early on and you're out there searching like, how do I know I'm trans? You know, hopefully you know that there is a community of people here who are willing to support you, who want you to have access to information and experiences that can help you figure out your happiest life direction is going to take you. T-Rex wants to point out one thing that about my process was that I got on HRT and that opened my eyes to how bad I needed it, which I didn't realize until I was actually on it. I was thinking, am I suffering enough to be on it? And then I took T and I realized just how bad it was and how good I felt on it. Yeah, I know Zinnia Jones wrote on her blog Gender Analysis a long time ago that she was experiencing what was being labeled depersonalization and depression, and she went on estrogen basically at the suggestion of her doctor that maybe it was more of a gender thing, and simply being on the correct hormones helps people realize, oh, this is how I've been suffering. Like, this is what I've been going through. And like not even realizing that their brain just literally works better with different hormones in it. So don't be afraid to try hormones. You know, it's not going to permanently change you in a month. And in a month's time, I think you would know pretty immediately if it's going to have this psychological benefit of like some trans people just feel better on the other hormones. Like, we are essentially allergic to our hormones that our body naturally creates in the same way that some people are allergic to their own sweat. Don't feel like, oh, I need to know for sure before I can start down that path. You don't have to know for sure. You can talk to a doctor. You can try a low dose, or you can try maybe like a hormone blocker instead of cross-sex hormones immediately. Yeah, I've been on every antidepressant. However, taking estradiol has done what I wish that every antidepressant would do. If you feel like you've been trying to treat depression for a really long time, and you suspect that you might be trans, you might just be allergic to your own hormones. Thank you so much to my patrons and potential future patrons. I especially want to shout out Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvog, Michelle Frateroli, Amanda B., Wellington Marcus, Michelle Winter, Danielle McDonald, Suzanne Maynard, Spooky Heather Sylvia, Past Null Infinity, Jamie Jam, Nova, Elizabeth Bartell, Sojo, Sarah A., Kevin Young, Athiet, Desi Quiche, Liam Hodgson, and Mr. Atheist.